What is happening?
Dude, that intro, I love the intro, but I'm looking at these pictures of me when I didn't shave for like 5 months. And holy hell, I mean, holy Moses beard going on there. And I'm just like, oh my God, that thing got long and full.
I look at
I look like I was like 70. I'm like only 65.
I look I look back on when mine was out of control and I was like, good gracious, what the heck was going on there?
Yeah.
Uh
I mean, I had an awareness too. Like I would walk into the bathroom and I get in the morning and, my hair, because, I'd grown my hair a little longer too. And it literally looks like the Bride of Frankenstein, beards out here. I'm like, did I just wake up from like a dream that I was a real estate agent and coach, but I'm really homeless living under a bridge or, I see
it's
those
so
pictures in there.
good. I, I
What's
think
going
I
on,
think for
Johnny?
me, it's good. For me, I fell in love with after I got it, trimmed up, right? I would go
Yeah.
and Sasha would get it all on point. And so I was like, yeah, it looks good. And then like 3 days later, it's like horrible. And I'm like, well, if I'm gonna go back to her, she's gonna make it look good again. So, anyways,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
what's good, brother?
Well,
So
I'll tell you, we're the topic we're going to talk about. It was probably way back in the day when I couldn't grow a beard. Thankfully, I couldn't then because I would have went gray quick with this housing market doing some interesting things. And we're going to unpack it today. You and I, we've lived through really great markets. We lived through the recession, 08, 09, 2010. And this is different, and it's different in a good way. And really, we're talking about inventory levels. Obviously, it's what everybody's experiencing. It When I say everyone, we were just talking before we came on here, is that when we see these statistics that we're about to share, um, they're national averages,
yeah,
particularly in the U.S. But it's happening even worse. Anything you're seeing here in the U.S., by the way, if you're an agent in the U.S., just think, know that you're still on a vacation in the Virgin Islands right now, compared to what our friends up north are going through and trying to get a home sold. Having said that, again, just to reiterate, we know that real estate's local. In inventories right now, they're up 20% over last year from the same time this year. It's a 20% increase in number of homes for sale. And the statistic I read was there's about 500,000 more buyers than there are homes, home sellers. And so, when you think about that, when I think of it, the first thing I think of is you were saying too, is that's how I grew up in real estate. Like that
yeah.
feels more normal to me. And I also want to speak to two different groups of agents out there that might be listening. Group number one, the OGs, the old men like us, the old women and old men like us that have been doing this for 20 years plus years, versus maybe you got your license about 5-6 years ago, and we all see things through a different lens. And the lens of a 25-year-old, 20-year-old veteran that's seen the ups and downs of a really, really challenging market where we have not only high inventory levels, but everyone's upside down in their mortgage. Even if you do get one under contract, you're looking at anywhere from 60 days was fast to get a short sale closed and across the finish line. It could take six. Some of these things took me 6 months because the banks didn't know what they were doing. No one knew what they were doing. And then versus today's market, last year, 2024, they say was the least amount of homes sold since I think 95, but it did not feel as ugly as 07, 08, 09. So depending on the lens you're seeing this through, if you've only had your license and been at this about 6 years, you're thinking, oh God, this is the most awful thing in the world. If you've had your license 20 years, you lived through that last recession and housing crash of 08, 09, well, then you're thinking, we're gonna make it through this. But here's the biggest difference that I want to point out is that buyers right now are hitting the brakes. The question is why? And the second question, once we figure out why they're doing it, is that the right move? John, you're coaching some of the top teams. I mean, some selling 600, 700, over 1,000 homes a year. Some of these. We're talking about the best of the best in real estate, top of the real trends, top 100, 200 list. What are your team leaders seeing? The ones that are out there taking these listings. And I know it's very local, right? So I mean, but you're coaching agents, from East Coast to West Coast, from north to all the way down, to Texas. What are you seeing? What are the team leaders telling you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, especially if they've been in the game for a while, that have a great brand, they're still attracting the opportunities, right? The opportunities are still coming their way. I think it's a lot of leadership challenges primarily, and educating and helping their agents, because most of the team leads, right? Team members, they haven't got to ride through a tough market. Most agents on a team, so it's a lot of coaching, a lot of training, a lot of things that you have to dust off to sharpen. And I was talking to a team this morning, and it really they're starting to feel it, right? Because like you and I were talking about, like Columbus is hot, right? I mean, that market is just absolutely on fire. Whereas talking to this other market in Virginia, and they're hyper local, they dominate a tight geographical area and have for decades. Now they're starting to feel it in there, right? So what's the conversations that have to have, and it really comes back down to leading the team and then leading the market, right? Being vocal, being educational, really putting out, like we said, on a national scale, but really a local scale, really what's happening. And we revisited some things to pay attention to. And I mean, I pulled up one of our old market reports, because one of the statistics, one of the numbers that we always paid attention to was the pending ratio. And, the pending ratio, for you guys to kind of understand the direction and what's happening in the marketplace, because that's kind of will tell the story. Pending ratio is just number of pendings in your market divided by number of actives plus number of pendings. So if you had, for example, 50 pendings, but you also have 50 active, so that's 100. So your 50 pendings divided by the 100, the 50 active and 50 pendings gives you your pending ratio, which is 50%, which is awesome, right? When that number starts to get down in, the 30s, the 20s, low 20s, creeping below 20, you're like, hold on, right? And whereas if it's high, that means things are moving fast. Things are coming on, but things are moving fast. So I think that's really a really good indicator, a really good metric to pay attention to. You got to get the data and look at it. And for us, like, we were students, like we obsessed about the market. I mean, we were studying, looking at everything, looking at product, looking at inventory, looking at what's coming on, what's going off, what's selling, what's not selling, what's it selling for. And I think, a lot of agents over the last few years, they've been very reactive to where they haven't had to spend a lot of time obsessing and studying the market. So I would definitely sharpen that skill set. But the other skill set, and this is what we talked about this morning, is they probably need to revisit and start sharpening their negotiation skills. As we start to get into this market, it's getting creative. It's, how do we, what do we throw in? What do we keep out? How do we, make it a situation that everybody's going to feel good about, to bring people together. And so that was just kind of an aha for them, as they've, been team lead for decades and have a great tight team. And she's like, yep, that's exactly where we need to pay attention to right now. So it's like, dusting off Chris Voss, dusting off, all the negotiation stuff is key.
Let's talk about that. Interesting point. Kind of talking about the two subsets of agents, our young guns, our new people that just, and I say new, I don't take that. Any of you new people, don't take it the wrong way. We love you. You're the future. So we want to see you thrive. But if you've been, let's say, you just got into it 6-7 years ago, have you really needed strong negotiation skills when you list a property, or even if you're on the buyer side and you're just submitting your highest and best, because that's what, if you're licensed 5 years ago, you were trained in that market, that particular market, when that was that a home hit the market, you had to be fast, you had to come in strong, highest and best terms, know how to put, appraisal clauses in there for the gaps, appraisal gap clauses, and learn all those things. That appraisal gap, that wasn't even a thing 10, 15 years ago. Like, I don't even remember that term. It just didn't even exist. Yeah. And so now they had to learn a whole new language. But negotiating, like literally negotiating back and forth with one offer, with one buyer, one seller, and really just hammering out terms, you didn't have to be really that highly skilled at that over the last, 5-6 years.
Right.
Because of the way the market was. You had to be you had to be fast. You had to be aggressive in a sense of getting that offer in fast, making sure you knew where your buyer was financially, what they could do, what they can't do, what they were willing to do. You still had to be very skilled at communicating what those options and what they were getting out. Okay, like, you can pay this. The comps are down here. You can pay whatever you like. And we even had, agents, which we never recommended no inspections, but how many offers and deals did we see coming in that had no inspection contingencies, right? All that's gone. So now we're back to negotiating 101. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it was one of my favorite parts of
Me too, man. Me too.
I loved negotiating. And sometimes I like negotiating too much, but it's now, if you have not taken the time to study your market, you can't just say you're an expert. You have to be an expert. You have to know these numbers inside out and backwards. We're talking not just like, I'm up in Northeast Ohio. You're in the Pittsburgh area. We're not talking about the entire market. I'm talking about the zip code. And then after that, it goes deeper than the zip code. Mm-hmm. Allison just went on a listing appointment here in my development here where I live. And we had, I went with her and we did the analysis together. I went with her on the appointment. We had to get hyper into this particular development, this particular subdivision. And the cool thing is there's no inventory here. There's a few specs out there, and other than those, which are overpriced, there's no resale. So when resale hits, if it's priced right, it's selling. There's one of two things happening. I'm just using this as an example. Either it's selling in 4 or 5 days, i.e. it's priced right, or it's selling in 90 days with 1 or 2 price reductions. Those are the only two things. And so, when you're counseling a seller, you have to be able to articulate that you are the expert, you've looked at the data, and explain to them, which one do you want to be, And we heard this back, 10, 12, 20 years ago of agents buying listings. We're going to start seeing what that looks like. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is, John, did you guys in Oklahoma?
Well, our number one competitor. That's the only way they can compete with us. They bought the listing, so they overpriced it and then they dropped their commission. I mean, that was how they bought it.
So they dropped the commission and raised the price maybe 10, 20% more than they knew that it was going to sell for.
100% because they're banking on the price reduction. Yep. Right. They're banking on the price reduction.
So, this is just a little tip for you listing agents out there. One of the things that I say at every listing appointment is beware of the listing agent. If they're interviewing multiple agents, beware of the listing agent who buys a listing. Mm-hmm. And you'll look at the seller, and the seller's going to be like, what do you mean? You mean they're going to buy my home from me? No. What they're going to do is they're going to inflate they're going to pull the same numbers that we're looking at. You can't just make these numbers up. These are the same numbers, the sales, what's on the market, what's not on the market, what's in pending. And then they're going to come up with this inflated number to put a big smile on your face and make your heart warm and think that they can actually get you that price when there's just no way that it's going to happen. Now, you could have bought listings 4 or 5 years ago, and you might have actually gotten the price, right? Like, you could get away with buying the listing. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to be a detriment. It's going to be a detriment because it's taking an average of 40 days nationwide for a home to sell. That's up a little bit from 35 days last spring. So last spring, 35 days was the average market time. Now it's up to 40. And if you're on the market longer, let's say 60 or 90 days, it goes right to that stigmatized listing. And you got to have be able to have these conversations. So, John, we talked about the two reasons why buyers are sitting on the fence. Number one, I want your take on this. They're waiting for interest rates to drop because there's like chatter. They're watching the news. They're watching all these outlets. Maybe they're going to do it. Maybe they're not. Trump wants them to lower it. The Fed's saying, no, we're holding tight. Income's up. What would you say if, you were faced with a buyer's like, I'm going to wait for the rates to drop?
Yeah. That's a real conversation, and you're going to have to back it with data. And as much of, that you can find if you've got a local insight, a local lender, somebody that is kind of really in tune to what's happening and kind of what the projections are, I think you're going to hear that ain't happening. I think the big thing to pay attention to is really going to be, the job, what's happening with jobs, and what's happening with jobs on a national scale, but also local scale is going to be really, really important to pay attention to what's happening with that. That was always a big threat of ours was, being a military town. What happens if they stop bringing, troops in? What if they shut down the base? That was always real conversations with base, base realignment. So we were always concerned, what was happening with the jobs, what was going on. So I think really looking at that, but being educated, but also providing some proof, because remember, people are going to just really gravitate to the story that they want to hear. So they're going to go look for people to support their belief in their story, and they're not going to believe you. That's why you got to be able to back that up. So that's where I would start to, push agents right now, because those conversations are going to come up. Then I think you've got to be able to have some data and have some other than you, right? That's why we do three-way calls, right? You need to be able to, on the recruiting side of things, that's why you do three-way calls. But you need that validation and that, to be able to back that up. So that's where you want to start making those connections and having those conversations and being able to get those as much proof in what we're hearing to be able to, to educate your clients.
Well, when people are waiting for rates to drop, that kind of reminds me of like someone who's looking to get into investments, but they're waiting for the stock market to crash. And I'm going to get in then. I don't know too many people, if any, that have ever just timed the market perfectly. It doesn't happen. You get into the market, you stay in the market. The stock market typically has always improved. Yes, you're going to have dips. Yes, you're going to have big hockey stick growth points, but eventually everything kind of evens out, and it's historically always gone up. Same thing with real estate. Real estate has always, appreciated. You look at it over 30-year period. If you owned a home 30 years ago and you still own that home today, assuming you haven't taken equity loans out of it, you're sitting on some wealth there. So timing the market, nobody wakes up and says, honey, the rates dropped, let's go shop for a house. It's usually a life event that happens. So my advice would be, like, even if the rates were to drop significantly, and there's no, the only thing that's going to cause rates to drop is if the economy starts to weaken. So let's just play that out. The economy starts to weaken. Job reports come out. Jobs are down. We start seeing unemployment rise. Well, guess what?
Is that going to trigger you to buy a home now?
Yeah. Now what? Now the rates come down and the affordability is still a challenge because less people have jobs and the actual ability to get a loan. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's a game that I wouldn't play personally. Buy where you're comfortable, but if it's time to buy, if it's time to move, move. Let's go to the second reason. The second reason buyers are sitting on the fence right now is they're thinking that maybe prices are going to come down. It would make sense if we start to see inventories rise. If there's 500,000 more buyers than there are sellers right now, you would think prices would have to come down. Here's the difference between 2008 and 9 and today. Prices are still slightly going up. They're not going up at a rate that we've seen over the last 8 years. but they're still holding steady. Pricing is still holding steady. If not, in certain areas, they're still creeping up. This is one of the big challenges. Now, they're predicting that maybe, just a prediction, by the end of this year, fourth quarter, they may start to dip maybe at the most 1%. It's 1% reduction in pricing, and that's all local. So it kind of begs to say is like, yes, you should pay attention to local or national trends, but you should not be hanging your hat on it when you're going out to a listing appointment, meeting with a home seller and trying to advise them on where they need to be. You need to be looking at the trends in the zip code, and then even in the closer into the community that home is in. If it's a highly desired, I was using this as an example here where I live, there's literally nothing for sale and resale. When that listing hits the market, they're going to be it. Now, they could still sit if they overprice the home, because that is where the market's at right now. But here's another thing for sellers out there. 30%. This is in Ohio. I think that it was a report that came out about cash buyers. 30% of homes in Ohio last year sold with cash, and there was no loan. So when you have that kind of cash power, then interest rates don't even matter in that type of transaction. And it shouldn't stop people from pulling the trigger and getting their property moved and doing what's driving that whole thing. Whether it's, hey, look, we've retired, we're sitting on a home with 3,500, 4,000 square foot, and it's just two people living in it, or whatever it is. I don't know. Those are my takes.
It is. It gets back to, how you grade every opportunity, and you have to identify, timing and motivation. And I think motivation being the big one, because like you said, with the buyer sitting on the sideline, they ain't really motivated. And so I think being able to go through and making sure you're doing a good job, in your conversation. And this is really being a true expert, right? We were talking about how valuable and important it is to have a system like CHSA to be able to go through to identify, because a lot of the things that we're talking about here are, the principles that we need to hit on inside of CHSA, and then also with buyers on CHBA. And it all comes down to timing and motivation, right? You set the appointment, qualify the appointment. What's your time frame? Why are you making a move? What if it happens if it doesn't sell, right? You can really start to uncover, hey, what happens if we go, 30 days and, multiple offers and we can't get into a home? I mean, what's plan B? You're really just trying to uncover. And so like for us, we graded them on timing and motivation. They had to be AAs. Like, who are your AA sellers? Who are your AA buyers, right? Like, we have to sell. We have a life event, like timing now, right? That's who you're giving your attention to. That's who you're talking to every day. That's like, you're, really trying to help them accomplish whatever it is they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And John, you had touched on the CHS. Just for people that don't know what that is, can you just kind of break that down? Because I know that you and Jay you mastermind that. You guys wrote it in, I think, 2010 or 11. It's right before
we started with it in 10, and we really vetted it all out throughout 11, and then we launched in 12. And CHSA is Certified Home Selling Advisor, and it's really a proven system that allows you to move away from the old look at me presentation, the old school me monster, look at all of our accolades, look at our awards, look at all the things we've done, because sellers, they want some proof, but they don't care. And then on the buy side, we had to, since we had CHSA, we had to create one for the buy side. So it's Certified Home Selling Buying Advisor. And CHSA, there were two things that we were able to pull out of production to be able to escape production. It took two things. One was understanding the financial model, which Greg Crabtree helped us, simple numbers, straight talk, big profits. And then us working with him to really understand the model, understand top line revenue, understand profit, healthy profit margin, understand your gross margin, what goes at what do you keep, what comes to the company after you pay your agents and your broker. And then, you got to operate salaries and expenses, and what's the proper allocation for each to your gross and then your top line. once we had that, we understood the model. And what happens, I mean, it's the same with you, right? You escape production. And I mean, it was one of the reasons that you looked at EXP was you had the real reality. You were staring production going, it's like getting out of jail and, for the weekend, you got to go right back. You were really looking at like, oh shit, like this is a reality. And so understanding that, but CHSA was the other, because prior to that, it was a presentation around our accolades. Hey, look at our rankings. Look where we rank in the city. Look where we rank in the state. Look where we rank in the region. Look where we rank in the country. Look where we rank in the world, right? Look at our trophies. Look at our plaques. And so
the branding that a team leader does is usually around their name, just like Jay Kinder.
Yep. Yeah.
In Lawton, Oklahoma, you couldn't drive 3 miles down the road and see his face on a billboard. And so that branding carries weight. And I think what you're saying is, you needed a system that anybody in the Jay Kinder home selling team, which was the brokerage, right? That any agent could use the system, walk in, and have a closing ratio at least close to Jay's. I don't know if everyone is going to get it at Jay's.
Stace was better. Yeah, Stace was better. Stace had a better ratio. Just his demeanor and his ability to build rapport and connect. Jay's great at it as well. Stace, he's also, twice the size of Kinder, bald head, kind of intimidating dude too, right? But, he's smile and he can really connect with you. But it worked with anybody, right? Here's the thing. Here's the litmus test. Brett Jennings that I know, he's the first $1 billion man. He was the first one to get to $1 billion sold in your market. It's happened since, but I believe he was the first one. We can check this on running a team built off of CHSA. He runs the certified home selling system to close $1 billion. So it works in Silicon Valley. And when we built it, it worked in Lawton, Oklahoma. At the time, our average sales price was $130,000. And I remember
Brett Jennings is bringing in commission checks of $130,000.
Exactly. And so when they presented this to Dan Kennedy, Dan goes, I love it. It's going to resonate with the affluent. And it really does. It works in any market, and it's built off of principles. And everything that you were talking about, that we're talking about the law of negotiation, we're talking about the law of differentiation, the law of exposure, the law of execution, right? The law of cooperation, why you want to cooperate with the other agents in your marketplace. But fundamentally, the first law drives it all, right? That's the law of expertise. And that's what we're talking about, right? Being a true expert, being a true advisor, advising them. And it goes back to your point earlier about buyers sitting on the sidelines, asking the questions. It's more consultative selling. And it's like, listen, why are you guys sitting on the sidelines? Hey, if rates were half the price, would you jump? What would you do? You're just trying to uncover true motivation. And we've been talking about this for the last couple of years. I just believe it's a market of have tos, not a market of want tos. Like literally buyers and sellers have to make a move or they're not moving. And you just got to do a better job. You got to speak that. Your marketing, your content, your conversations have got to be, it's what we talk about, right? Meet them where they're at. Where are they at in their head, and how can we join that conversation to the truly motivated?
So, John, I want to unpack those two things again and circle back to the CHBA because, yes, the law won. And by the way, go to honeybadgernation.com. The site is finally redone. We can go see it. Feel free to check it out. And you can we have these courses. If you're part of our organization, Honey Badger Nation, you can take these courses for free. I paid literally tens of thousands of dollars to have my entire brokerage certified with this. Take them for free. If you're part of our organization, go ahead and honeybadgernation.com, scroll down and check them out. But so the two biggest reasons why buyers are on the fence right now are because of rates, and they think that maybe they're going to come down and maybe they'll get a better, lower payment, and B, maybe pricing is going to come down. Ultimately, what's stopping them is fear. So when you think about it, it's either when fear outweighs motivation, they stop, they freeze, they paralyze. And so the beauty in the CHSA, the CHBA presentations is that it's designed to not only position you as the expert, build trust, build authority for you so that they listen to you. And in doing that, once you master it, you're now able to reduce or even eliminate that fear, because now you're replacing their fear with trust. You're replacing their fear with the confidence. And you can only do that by following the system to the T. I want to touch on one other thing. And this really is why I believe that if you go and take the course and you start to use this, like I sold thousands of homes with this thing, my team and I, anyway. Okay. This was the system. We didn't have 5 different ways of doing it. It was one way of doing it. And Brett Jennings, I don't care if you're selling in Silicon Valley, Cleveland, Ohio, Lawton, Oklahoma, Lakeland, Florida, wherever you're at, Dallas, Texas, it works, is that it differentiates you from everyone else. You know,
100%.
You might have an 800-pound gorilla in your market. And what I mean by that is, like, their marketing's everywhere. Maybe they're just a big brokerage. We have a big one with a big green sign here. They have a lot of market share. So maybe that's you. And maybe you're not selling 300-400 homes. Maybe you're selling 10 or 12 and you want to get to 26. The number one thing you need to do is differentiate yourself from the competition. And the way to do that is the CHBA, CHSA. Why? Money moves to difference, not similarity. If you plan on trying to come in and maybe use your team's accolades or your brokerage's accolades against the other 800-pound gorilla listing agent who gets all the listings, they're probably going to win. But if you have a completely different approach and you use these step-by-step systems, money moves to difference. I used to beat agents who were selling double or triple what I was selling back in the day because I differentiated myself. I learned the system in 2012, I want to say. I think that's when you guys rolled out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about differentiation and why agents really need to start mentally thinking about differentiation when they're having these conversations, the way they're having these conversations, the way they're communicating with their clients.
100%. I mean, that's law too, law of differentiation. And it's how you are going to differentiate, their property to stand out, especially now inventory levels are climbing. They're not, to the levels that they were, but they're climbing. And so how are you going to differentiate that property to make it stand out and not be cookie cutter like all of the rest? And you have to have it in there. So we learned this lesson the hard way when we opened the brokerage in Texas, in DFW. When you go into a massive market, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to have the brand presence that we were able to establish in a small market like Lawton. And so we quickly were like, uh-oh, nobody knows us, nor do they care. What do we do? And that's where, at that time, our differentiation, when you worked with us, that's where we did the pre-inspect for the major mechanicals, because we wanted to negotiate from a position of strength. So we got out ahead of it. Then we had the 2-hour touch-up. We're not going to recommend that you hire a stager. We're actually going to bring 2 of our stagers in for 2 hours. They're going to use everything in your house to get your home stage and photo ready. And then our professional photographer came on top of it. That was what you got when you hired us. And so that was how we chose to differentiate our value proposition to sellers in the market of what we were going to do for you, different than what everybody else. So that was just an example.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. The 2-hour touch up. I should have, dang, you guys never coached. You guys kept that in your back pocket. I would keep that all day long. We did a 2-hour touch up, but I never called it that.
Yeah.
Called it staging. Another good example. Everyone's talking about staging. That's a great example of you're staging the property.
Yeah.
You called it a 2-hour touch up.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And how did we offset that? Well, it all rolled into our listing transaction fee. Right now, did we have some slippage? Did we have, money out on the front end? Of course, right? But that was our decision in the model at the time. To do those 3 things cost us about $670. Our transaction fee was $695. Did we have slippage? Yeah, it was a number I paid attention to on a consistent basis because our listing taken to listing sold ratio was only 82%. In a super hot market of North, DFW, and it still had slippage, but we were okay with that because we had to create some differentiation until we could get a brand presence to where, that number was going to go up a little bit more. So that's an example, right? But what the beautiful thing with CHSA is it's like a buffet, and you pull out the variables, because in CHSA, there's 115 variables in the home selling process that we identified. And, determine if your home's going to sell at the top, the middle, or the bottom of the market was really dependent upon how many of the variables we were going to proactively manage. And you go through exposure, differentiation, obviously expertise being the first one, cooperation, how we're going to cooperate with the other agents, because there's in-town buyers, out-of-town buyers, and buyers working with other agents. How are we going to, we don't want to alienate ourselves like a lot of companies are right now, alienate ourselves from that buyer pool that are working with other agents. Law of acquisition, how are we going to acquire opportunities, negotiation, and execution, which is really about your team. And listen, it is the best process. I will put it up against anybody's process. And it's so good. One of the things that we never did, and I've been working hand in hand with Georgia, she has massive differentiation. And if you guys have not paid attention to what she's doing, she is a storyteller that just happens to sell real estate. And she tells stories in her videos and her content. She is winning social media at a massive level. And she is in arguably the toughest market in Canada. And listings are just stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking. And when you spend $2,000 to $2,500 to bring a listing to market, and you've got $50,000, $60,000 just sitting there in upfront costs, right? You've got to have a great system to really be able to educate your sellers of what's going to happen. And so we've overhauled CHSA for Canada with her and her team's help. It's amazing. And so now you arm somebody that has social media with a proven process, game over, right? Who can compete with her now? They can't compete with her on social. Now she's got a proven system to help clients and sellers sell their home up to 18% more than the traditional real estate agent.
That's
tough to beat,
man.
Tough to beat, Al.
Yeah, man. Hey, let's check this out real quick. So, just for any, let's see if I can let me do this. Yeah. So check it out. Little sneak peek of the new Honey Badger Nation. That's not it. There it is. All right. So you can nominate your Honey Badger of the Month award.
That's in your pipeline. So reshare.
Uh-oh. Oh, geez.
Kill that one. Bring up the other one.
Okay. Whoops. Yep. Wrong one. All right. So let's do this. Screen share. Present or screen share. And then put the new one up there. Yeah. Where'd that go? Oh, honeybadgernation.com. There it is. Share that. Here.
Boom. There we go.
All right. So honeybadgernation.com. And here we've been talking about CHSA, CHBA, right? Now, will this scroll with me? Is that scrolling?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we got our merch. Get your merch. We got some fresh merch. We got our legacy. We got the sweet Honey Badger hat here, inside out. I carry this bag literally everywhere I go. But down here to resources, you have your login courses. If you're part of our organization, you're going to get it free. If you're interested in that, hit me up, DM me. We'll share with you how to become a member for free. And down here, we have these two videos. And these are the videos. These are the whiteboard videos that we would send a seller before a listing appointment. Watch this. That way it does a lot of the heavy lifting of what our system's about for you. Really cool. Also a buyer one in there as well. And just all kinds of great resources in here. We got tear sheets, placemats, all this stuff for our members. And so, yeah, check them out and make sure you educate yourself, get differentiated, and you will start to win listings over your competition, and it'll be fun. And you're going to make more money and make income, and you'll have less sleepless nights. There you go.
Yes, sir. I love it.
Right,
yeah, it's good stuff, man. I think, back to, the final thing, it's really, control the controllables and, get out to the front end of the things within your control. And in this game, there's only a couple. And if you can just really allocate 70+% of your time on, the things that are within your control, no matter what the market does, you're going to be fine. Like you're going to be really fine if you can do that.
What the focus? What the focus?
What the focus?
We all have control over our focus. All right, brother. Appreciate you, John.
Appreciate you.
Any questions? We're here for you. We'll see you at the top.
See you, brother.